language is an interesting question. I think language is very fundamental. When we were talking before about problems and hopes and the questions, the importance of the question we ask, um, it's also important, I think, to recognize that we actually, as human beings, we create worlds with language. We live inside of language and stories. And again, if you think just of a silly example, if someone comes up to you and says, "What happened to your hair today?" Even if you don't want to think about it, it's almost becomes irresistible to go look in the mirror, because you now have a kind of thought virus inside of you that's connected to your hair. And similarly, if someone says to you, "Wow, you're a mess," that voice gains a kind of authority in you. And so we're creating worlds in the stories we tell and the way we see each other. Imagine if you were a parent and your child had been struggling and wasn't especially attractive, and a principal from a nearby school came and said, "Wow, I can see, even though you're trying as a mother, your child's really not doing well. We'd be happy to give them a scholarship to our very good school on one condition, that you have your child, the day they arrive, stand up in a public assembly and say, 'Wow, I'm so glad to be here because, I'm really stupid and I'm really behind and I'm really ugly, and I'm just so grateful that you were willing to give me a place in this school.'" Would you as a parent be willing to take that bet? Well, I don't know any parent that would be willing to do that, because we know intuitively that such an experience of labeling yourself that way in public would create the opposite of what you would hope for as a parent. You would have an identity as someone who was limited, who was stupid, who was unattractive, and that would be a humiliating experience for the child. And yet, curiously, we think nothing at all about the fact that we ask whole communities to apply for funding by writing hardcore proposals justifying the funding on the basis of how ugly and how far behind and how incompetent they are, and therefore how needy they are of what the funding is that's available. That has exactly the same effect in communities. It reinforces a negative identity, it reinforces a cycle of dependency, and it becomes a destructive act. In fact, if there was a public policy designed to disempower communities, it would look like that. Simply design a process in which they constantly have to tell their identity story as people who are incapable. And so I think one of the things that we really have to think about is our choice of language as a moral choice. That if we're able to call worlds into being by what we describe and invite others to call worlds into being, then what sort of worlds do we want to conjure? Because if we have a choice of conjuring in the life of a child an identity and a future which is constructive and productive, why would we not do that? Because we know when we see a child being yelled at by their parents at the grocery store with a whole series of curses, we know, we recoil, we see how damaging that is in the life of the child, and we know how that is in our own lives when people do that for us. People who bring out our best and people who bring out our worst. So just to reflect on what those contexts are in which we bring out the best, what brings out the best in ourselves and how we bring it out in others, and what words we can use to do that, and take responsibility for the words we use.